Hey y'all. So I rolled out of bed today and I immediately wanted to do a reading like before I was even fully conscious. I really just wanted to like roll out of bed and do it, but there were some things I had to do first, like clean my space and everything. I'm mentioning this because there could be something you need to do that's like in the way, or like certain things you've been avoiding. There could be like a certain chain of procrastination you've been on where you really want to do something but have been putting it off because there are other like minor tasks in the way that you don't want to do, but they're blocking you from doing the thing that you want and maybe need to do, because I was going to say that. So yeah, that's one message. And then another thing that popped into my head right before turning the camera on, it was like a message saying you could have the best intentions for what you do, or if this is a past thing, for what you did. But this can apply to like anything in life. So you can have the best intentions, but it doesn't minimize the impact that has on somebody. That kind of sentiment can be applied to so many, like virtually anything in life. And it seems really basic, but I feel like many people don't think about that enough because people get so defensive when avoiding accountability, I want to say, because they kind of default to that behavior, or like deflection, I should say, when they are being pushed to take accountability for something. So I feel like it could go either way for this collective. Like, this may be somebody in your life, and or it may apply to you in some aspect of your life, because I think it's important to always look within. Getting distracted. Look at the bigger picture. I just picked that up. I got some new decks, by the way, which I'm really excited about. But anyway, back to what I was saying though. So like, maybe take a look at like, if there's anything you feel you've been avoiding, or like uncomfortable feelings you may be avoiding sitting with, because I was just reflecting on this, which is why I think the thought came to my head, because every reading I set intentions. I ask to be a channel for any messages that need to come through for only the highest good of the collective. But here's the thing, I think a lot of people, and like this gets into beliefs, so like I'm not gonna go too far into that, but I am tending to lean further away from a higher power. Not that I don't think a higher power exists, but I think that attributing our actions to our belief in a higher power takes away much, if not all, of our personal accountability. And that's a whole like ethical, personal debate in itself. So I'm not telling anyone what to believe or like what you should believe, etc. But it's just something to think about, because in my experience, I have learned that that's kind of where that message comes from. Like, is my own experience, where throughout my tarot and mystical journey, I have purposely set good intentions, or so I thought. Like, you can say you have good intentions, but there's a difference between what you're saying you're doing and the implications of your literal actions, if that makes sense. And upon reflecting through my own past, that's what I have been coming to terms with, is that on a cognitive and conscious level, I was saying, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing X because of Y, so that means Z. So like, I'm doing this for reasons I felt were justified and right because I'm doing it for a good reason. I felt like I was doing it for the highest good, or for, other people's own good or whatever. But and especially in spaces like this, like spiritual, mystical spaces, the lines can be very blurry. The ethics can be extremely gray. And which is why I feel like personal accountability is extremely important, and why it's so important to the phrase "as above, so below" is coming to mind. But it's so important to ground yourself, and the temperance card as well. It's so important to ground yourself in the physical, mundane reality before, or at least like weigh it with anything spiritual that you're doing, to weigh both options, or weigh all perspectives, considerations. And because I feel like in the past, at least speaking for myself, I've gotten so caught up in doing and like my mission or whatever that I wasn't stopping to think about so much, and how those actions could potentially affect people, or how they might make them feel. So I know I'm going on a bit of like a ramble here, but I feel like this is really important, and I'm trusting that this is coming through in the video because somebody needs to hear it. And on that note, I did want to mention at some point that like I said, I'm leaning away from channeling spirit or any sort of like higher power guides, etc., because like I feel like there's a time and a place, and you really have to use discernment when you're doing that sort of work, or like I feel like you really have to think about, like, is this coming from me or like a subconscious part of myself, or is this actually what I am claiming it is? You know what I mean? Because this is my problem with religion, and by extension other forms of spirituality such as tarot, mediumship, divination, whatever. It's not exclusive to any specific areas. Like any medium, any sort of spiritual or religious medium has the capability of being exploited or used to manipulate or misguide or deceive, regardless of whether that's your intention or not. Which again is why it is so important to really think about action versus intention, about the ways that it affects other people. Because on some level you could say, well, it's not my responsibility how other people take it, which is true to a certain degree. But if you're the one putting out the information, I feel like it's partially on you to at least let people be aware of the dangers, you know what I mean? Like, granted, you also can't account for every situation and how somebody's going to take something, but if you are, I say, why not point it out? Why not let them be aware? I don't know if that makes any sense. So my point with saying all that is, like, personally, I don't know exactly what I believe, and that's because throughout my personal history of doing tarot, like I said, I always had good intentions, but my actions didn't necessarily hold up with the morals or values that I had, or at least wanted to have. And yeah, there were many things that I did that I feel were incongruent with what I wanted to do, and like I said, my personal morals, beliefs, and ethics. But I kind of thought, I don't really know what I thought. I don't really know. Because I wasn't really thinking. And, you can't know what you don't know, but you can take responsibility for it now. You can own up to it now and change your behavior. The best apology is changed behavior, because saying sorry doesn't mean anything unless you change your behavior, because it's just a word. And yeah, like if like you might be sorry or feel sorry, but unless you're actually changing your behavior, like I said, it doesn't really mean anything. And a lot of people just say sorry because they want forgiveness without actually doing the hard work of unpacking why they did the action in the first place and doing the hard work of reflecting in order to change their behavior. So I hope that makes sense. And my point with saying that is, from just based off of my experience, I don't necessarily want to claim anymore that I am channeling from any specific spirits or guides or higher powers, because the way that I feel right now is that I'm just me reading some cards, okay? And if there's any higher guidance that comes in, I don't necessarily, I just had 222. I don't necessarily know where it comes from. And that's just me being transparent, because I just don't know. And there are many different possibilities, but I don't know. So I'm not going to say, well, I think it's this, because I don't know. And I don't want my beliefs to necessarily influence the way you think. So I hope that makes sense. And the other reason why is because there's a few reasons actually. For one, like, aside from truly believing they are channeling and thinking that they're hearing spirits or whatever, I'm not discounting that. I'm not going to argue with that, because again, I don't know. But I feel like a lot of people feel subconsciously feel the need to say that they are channeling spirits, higher powers, etc., because other people just don't want to listen to people for the sake of listening, right? So because that's like on a subconscious level, because if you have self-worth, you should know, ideally, that you are worth being listened to just because you have something to say that is worthwhile. You know what I mean? Like, that could be a message for somebody as well, that like your words, your experience, your insight has meaning, and you don't need to attribute yourself to a higher authority or to have some sort of what's it called, like credential or label, or like some sort of role. Like, for example, like if I, like, to me it feels like if I was going to say, oh, I'm channeling spirits, etc., it feels like saying, oh, well, you should listen to me because I'm a psychic medium. Like, no, like, that feels very dangerous to me, because I'm sorry, but you need to think for yourselves. You do. And sometimes it feels like the advice is coming from beyond, but again, do we really know? I don't know. It could be coming from our subconscious. It could be coming from our higher self. Whatever that means, I don't know. But the whole point is, we don't know. I hope this ramble is constructive or helpful for some people. But anyway, but the point is, I'm just personally tired of using that language, because I feel it is very dangerous and holds many implications. So, I don't really want to delete or remove my old videos, but in the future I might, because, I don't want to have like no videos on my channel, but just a heads up, in the future, if I remove old videos, that is why. And other people might say, if you're reading cards and you're not a medium or you're not a psychic or whatever, then like you're not qualified to read cards. But it's like, anybody can fucking read. Anybody can. And I personally feel more comfortable and confident in just being honest and upfront, because I'm not claiming to be something I'm not or that I don't know that I am. And honestly, it doesn't really, like, this is kind of wild to say, but it doesn't really matter to me if I am a psychic medium or not. Like, because it doesn't change my sense of self-worth, and that's not something I had before. I really leaned into being a mystic and a medium and a psychic and all these labels because I felt like it made me, this was all subconscious because I wasn't consciously aware that was why, but unconsciously I felt like I needed those labels to have some sort of authority. I wanted people to listen to me, and I felt like unconsciously I felt like I needed a reason. I needed to give people a reason to listen to me. But if I'm being real, if, like, first of all, I shouldn't have to convince people to listen to me, because that's your choice. That's your choice. And that's why I say that, because I shouldn't have to convince you, because that's your choice. And I can't make you or anyone else listen to the advice that I give. But I personally know that my advice works. And it's not necessarily because it comes from outside of me. Okay, some of you should really check out the channel No Nonsense Spirituality, because while I don't agree with all of her views necessarily, or at least the way, like, her framing and way she presents certain things, hearing her perspectives on things really changed my life, because she's an ex-Mormon. Honestly, really check out her channel, or like her TikTok, because I found these videos through TikTok, but she also has a YouTube channel, so I don't know how much of her stuff is on YouTube and vice versa, but I believe she has a master's in theology, and she got so good at determining what type of God a society had based off of what that society's needs were. And so I really liked what she said when she said that the concept of God is created by humans, which is true, because everything that we know was created by us, by human beings. So everything we think we know, we don't really, because we only know what we think we know based off of what we've already established. And if we don't question things, if we don't think critically, we aren't able to discern what we individually want to believe or what we should believe. It's just really important, because just because you're hearing a message and people have told you that's what you should believe doesn't mean that it is. It doesn't mean that it's going to align with your morals and values and beliefs. And that's why I believe questioning is so important. So anyway, learning that is what really changed things for me, because instead of like claiming that I was channeling a higher power or whatever, which I wasn't like doing, like I genuinely believed that, so I wasn't trying to intentionally misguide anybody, but now I feel like that belief makes so much more sense to me, that the concept of God is something that we created, and everything, like all the wisdom that we claim is otherworldly or divine or from a higher power is really from within us. Like, I do believe that there's a whole untapped source, like, from within all of us, because, like, if anything, I just believe in source, like, as in the energetic life force. Ooh, I just saw 111 that goes through Earth. Like, I don't believe I don't know why I'm going on about my beliefs. Personally, I don't believe that God is like has human-like qualities, or is even like a sentient being, you know what I mean? Like, I believe that like God is just energy, like the life force that flows through all of us. And so when people say God is within you, I feel like that's what they're talking about, because God didn't create us. Like, we are all one because we are all part of that life force. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's very like out there. But I feel like this is all really important to say, and I fear that I haven't finished all my points completely. And to further this kind of like line of thinking or thought pattern, I feel like so much of what we do comes from a desire to want to control outcomes, circumstances, to manipulate, whether, no matter what your intentions are, no matter like whether you view it as good or bad, manipulation is just that, manipulation. It's a means of molding the circumstances to fit a goal. And so, depending how you look at it, that is deceptive in its own way. So yeah. So this has been, I don't know if this has been cohesive at all, but I hope that you can take something away from this. Personally, now I just feel, from my own experiences, I just want to be really careful about what I say and what I do and whether or not those things are lining up. And I feel like that's something that we can all at least be mindful of, because of the ways that people tend to defend themselves or deflect, because they really don't want to be seen as a bad person, or that they did anything wrong, because they weren't intentionally trying to hurt anyone. But like, is anybody? Or are the people who are honest or just upfront about hurting people just more aware of what they're doing and their desires? That's pretty radical thought, I feel like. But like, I'm just being honest. Like, if you're, yeah, I feel like if you're being, that's funny because this card is what I saw before doing this reading. But anyway, yeah, like if you're being honest with yourself, that's a message in itself, is that if you're being truly, truly honest with yourself, what were you really trying to do? And maybe you weren't thinking, and you don't know why you were acting in the ways you do, but if that's the case, then just own up to that. But I do feel like it requires looking deeper, because I think, because a lot of people, I feel like, don't want to admit that because it's immature and reckless and irresponsible. And so I don't see, like, what is wrong with saying, yes, I was being irresponsible. Because if you want to change, why not just own up to that? I don't know. Because, like, I feel like people are afraid of their own guilt. I feel like people are afraid of not being forgiven. So it's like you're just operating out of fear because you're afraid of the consequences of your actions. So it's hard to decipher here what the energy that I'm feeling. It's hard to put it into words. But I feel like people are afraid of the fallout of their actions, and so they don't want to admit to their actions because they feel like that makes themselves look more guilty. But it's like, you already did it. It already happened. Whether it was your intention or not, you just need to accept it, and that's uncomfortable, because I think a lot of people have this like moral pearl clutching about things. But like, if we're being real, we all do shit that is questionable. So if we all just owned up to it and worked on ourselves and worked on changing our behavior, I think the world would be a better place. Like, if we were all just more understanding and more upfront, more direct. Because like, the people who are busy pointing the finger and being like, oh, you did this, and like, they want to basically crucify you for your actions. Funny how the sun is coming out right now. The chances are they're probably not looking within, because they're pointing the finger at you because they're just as afraid of people unearthing shit about them. So they're busy pointing the finger, being like, well, look what they did. And it's just a vicious cycle, and on of like, okay, yeah, I did this, but like, look at what that person did because it was worse. Like, oh my god, like, I don't know where this is coming from. Okay, so I just pulled these, and this is kind of funny because I got the shadow, the mirror, the king, and the father. So I was thinking about the mirror, and like, I was going to say mirroring aspect. We all mirror aspects of ourselves in some way. And what's interesting is the song True Story by Ariana Grande stuck in my head, and she's saying, this is a true story, like, I'll be the villain if you need me to. And the thing is, what is true? Like, true to you, like, that's your truth, right? It's the way you're framing it. So, and I feel like the shadow is coming out of the mirror because you might think, like, I feel like this goes with the, wait, what? What am I saying? Like, this energy of, like, pointing the finger, where you might blame someone else and be like, it's their fault. But that's the way you're choosing to look at it. Because, and, like, I don't mean this in, like, a bypassing way, because there are things that people do that are just, they're wrong. They're just wrong. And, like, so I'm not saying that you should blame yourself for another person's actions or anything like that, so don't take it that way. But I'm more talking about where one is being defensive, like that feeling of discomfort that comes up when being confronted with your actions or your past, and you want to say, oh, but so and so did this, or like blah 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 blah. Like, there's some sort of, like, there's something that, some sort of shadow that you're not seeing in yourself that needs to be confronted. And then it's, what's interesting is with the king and the father, I'm definitely getting like a religious energy from this. I think just because of the subject matter, for one, and okay, yeah, is the patriarchal energy. That's what I'm getting from it. So let's just take a quick look. Wow. Okay, this is like scarily on point with what I said. Pause if you want to read. Okay, if our lives are imagined as a kingdom containing the entire spectrum of human experience, the king presides over it all. Which reminds me of things I was saying, like how you can't account for all human experience, whatever. Through the lens of the king, we assess the state of our land, make decisions, and rule accordingly. Therefore, the king must be thoroughly and regularly vetted so as to avoid corruption. So this is basically what, yeah, like, I'm hearing authority is king, so I don't know what that means, but but what I mean by that is, I feel, well, okay, what I wanted to say is, I feel like this has to do with what I was saying, where we have to constantly reassess our morals, beliefs, and like if they're aligning with our action. And so it's like that same sort of idea. Recognize the dual nature of the king. He is either seated in benevolence and strength, guiding you toward peace, or he is oppressing the weak out of a need to control. And that's what I was saying. There's not much middle ground. Some think of the king as the ultimate expression of the ego, yet the great kings of mythology and history serve from an egoless place. They take their throne with grace and humility, knowing the divine uses them as a channel to heal deep and long-standing discrepancies in the kingdom. And that's what is funny, because the divine uses them as a channel. This is what started my whole rant. This is why when light, benevolence, divine leadership, service, nobility, and when dark, oppression, misuse of power, and corruption. So, you know what it reminds me of is, trigger warning, Trump, where there's that video of him where his cabinet is like preying on him. They believe that the Lord or God, Jesus, whatever, I don't really know, is using him as an instrument of divine will or something. And it's like, what? This is what I mean. It's like oppressing the weak out of a need to control is what is really divine and benevolent about that. Divine leadership, service, nobility. Leadership does not include oppression. It does not include oppressing those beneath you or who have less power. Like, that's why they say with great power comes great responsibility, because if you are going to be a leader, you have to be responsible for the well-being of your subjects, of your community. You have to lead from that egoless place and know, like, be able to know and discern what is best for everyone and not just your own interests and what you can benefit from it. So this also says, once the king's relationship to divinity is broken or challenged, he often acts from a place of fear, scrambling to uphold his image and power. Yeah. That's a lot to unpack. The king is necessary. He is a bridge between the eternal and the day-to-day. It is also said that it is necessary for the king to die. This is a death of ego. Like, I don't know, that's a lot. I was just contemplating this once the king's relationship to divinity is broken or challenged. He often acts from a place of fear, scrambling to uphold his image and power. And I was contemplating the idea of a king falling in that nature. I feel like if the divinity of a leader is being broken or challenged / questioned, I feel like a real leader would allow that disintegration to take place, because it exposes their true intentions and what this is really about. So if it's about power and control, I feel like they would try to, act from a place of fear, scrambling to uphold his image and power. So try to maintain the status quo. But if a true king knows that, I just saw 111, knows that he's not truly in it for the power and the recognition, and is not leading from a place of oppression, that he would let that deconstruction take place, because it's not about just being in control. It's not about how others view you, it's about your intentions. Oh, interesting. Because that kind of comes back to the initial message. Wait, now I'm confused, because I feel like that almost contradicts what I said at the beginning. Okay. Hold on, let's think about this. Okay, so it's not... Okay, because if people are viewing or questioning your beliefs or your actions, whatever, then let them. Because if you truly have good intentions, your actions are going to reflect who you truly are ultimately at the end of the day, without you trying to control the outcome. So you could literally, like I said, disintegrate or deconstruct your place as a leader and let them think what they want to think, because your humility and ability to be consistent in your own reflection upon your beliefs and actions, and if it is true that your actions did not align with your intentions, then you change your behavior and just allow your behavior to speak for itself, rather than try to control the narrative. Because if people already have an idea of you, nothing is going to change that until they see something different, or like they choose to see something different. Like if they're truly taking your behavior at face value, but the people who establish a narrative about you and just want to believe in that narrative, they're never going to see you for who you truly are, if that makes sense. This is a really intense message. Okay, and then we have the Father. The Great Father, the masculine, the protector. I'm hearing the song Father Figure. So that could be the George Michael one or the Taylor Swift one. I'm not too keen on Taylor Swift these days. And unless it's a great example, unless she's seriously I don't even know if, like, some people are just at the point where it's like, I don't think they are capable of changing, and or the extent of change that they would need to embark on, because when someone shows you who they are, believe them. But anyway, that's a side note. But I find that interesting because that song, it's about corruption, I feel, and I feel like it's a misuse of power. It's about exploitation, whatever. So yeah, interesting. So yeah, the Father embodies both light and dark aspects of the masculine. I had a feeling that was going to come through, like the shadow masculine energy. Thus, he is infinitely dynamic and complex. His energy is strong and regal, embodying such virtues as honesty, wisdom, and loyalty. Yet, ironically and simultaneously, the father is often absent, literally or emotionally. Through absence or action, the father eventually reveals that he is neither a king nor a god, but a human being with many flaws and wounds. He is both the guardian and one who leaves us to the wolves, here yet gone, the champion and the failure. The father can never resolve or escape this duality. It is inherent in the archetype itself. Witnessing the father's limitations allows the child to grow beyond the family and into the world. So when light, supportive, strategic, regal, kind, authority. When dark, disappearing, disappointing, devastated by failures. Go deeper, Saturn devouring his son. I've heard about that story and I was like, what? And I am intrigued but also confused. I feel like this archetype description is a perfect metaphor for the Christian view of God, or honestly how a lot of people and cultures view God, because our conception of God embodies these virtues, so to speak, honesty, wisdom, and loyalty, but the father is often absent, literally or emotionally. He is both the guardian and one who leaves us to the wolves, here yet gone. And I love this last line, witnessing the father's limitations allows the child to grow beyond the family and into the world. And this is exactly what I feel is dangerous about the way people view God, is that I'm sorry if this offends people, but I'm also not, because it's just my opinion. So I'm sorry if it challenges your beliefs, but this is just what I've come to believe. I don't believe it is healthy to view a God that is limitless, because what's so funny is Saturn, which represents the father, the key principles of Saturn are responsibility, limitations, restriction. And Saturn is about reality. And this is why I resonate personally with the astrology archetype of Saturn being the father versus God the father. Because the structure, while it feels limiting, while it's hard, is what ends up helping us in the end, because it provides the structure. It gives us a sense of responsibility. Those limitations provide walls. Yeah, like they provide structure for us to grow, and without limitations we can get lost. There's no grounding, the as above so below, right? It's all fine and good to believe in the energy of like expansion, of a lack of limitations, of limitless possibility. But at the same time, we don't live in a limitless world. We live on a planet, Earth, that has finite resources. For example, billionaires. Look at what the belief that resources are limitless has done to this planet. Their beliefs or goals of having like limitless power and resources is plainly contradictory, 1111, to the life we live on Earth, where there are inevitably going to be repercussions for such beliefs and behavior, where there are limitations, where we have to be responsible because it's doing what's right, it's doing what's real, it's grounded in reality. And reality doesn't always look nice and pretty and appealing because it's hard. And that is the energy of Saturn. It's bleak. It's the truth, which is ironic because I feel like Jupiter is usually what's associated with the truth, but it's more like truth seeking. And because Jupiter's limitless and expansive and it's more about ideas, whereas Saturn is reality. 1212. So I saw 1212 before starting this reading, so that could be a confirmation number for somebody. But yeah, so I feel like this energy is grounding your version of truth into reality. And if your dreams and goals are not truly feasible or realistic, it's time to look at that. And it's one thing to dream, but it's another to do what you can within your limitations, if that makes sense. You can dream, but it's also important to be realistic about the limitations of that dream if that dream were to be grounded in reality. I hope that makes sense. Like, for example, if your dream is to be financially free and to not have to worry about money, does that mean you will not have any problems ever again for the rest of your life? No. Realistically, to be financially free, you have to limit yourself in other ways. You can't just spend recklessly and endlessly because you're financially free. Like, with great power comes great responsibility. So it's ironic because what we want, this sense of freedom, I don't want to say it's impossible, but we have to build it. And to build it, we have to have structure, which requires responsibility and limitation and restriction. I don't know, just something to think about. That's very abstract, but I feel like those who get it are going to get it. So then we have the shadow. Pause to read if you'd like. The unspeakable, the unwelcome, the denied. Although every card in the archetypes deck has a shadow potential, this card asks us to delve into the qualities of the shadow itself. We often think that the shadow can be purified, illuminated, and made right through effort and achievement. However, it is typically the case that our lofty pursuit of ascension and perfection is the very source of shadow material itself. By rejecting parts of ourselves in the world, we begin to separate from the whole. Rather than getting to know the qualities and content of our shadow, we busy ourselves with avoiding its presence. This is denial. When this card appears, it is time to take inventory of those things you've been denying. When the mind responds with, no, anything but that, you are touching shadow. Find support for this deep inner work and move toward the shadow with patience and compassion. I find that funny because this is kind of what this message started with, about the inability to accept our realities, the truths about ourselves, aka the shadow sides of ourselves, the things we have done from our shadow self, or where we just weren't thinking or behaving clearly. It's still part of ourselves. I mean, if we deny that, we retreat further into the shadow because we are kind of intentionally deceiving, or a lot of times unintentionally, but still being deceptive because we are not being honest about all sides of ourselves. Because if we try to act like we are better, then it's just more denial of who we really are, because the reality is that we all have a shadow side. That we all have a shadow side. So trying to deny the sides of yourselves that you don't like is just repressing yourself further. So I don't know. I could go on about that, but this is so funny. Because I'm going to read the mirror lastly. Pause to read. The reflection, the illusion, the looking glass. We look into mirrors every day without recognizing them as portals into another realm. They can shatter, flatter, distort, reflect, and project an image back to us that we deem to be true. The energy of the mirror is all about self-perception. When the archetype of the mirror appears, we are in the mythic land of Narcissus, who saw himself reflected in a pool and fell in love with his own image. So compelled by his reflection, he could not turn away, a fixation that eventually led to his death. Recognize the power and danger of the mirror. It is a construct, one that may drive a shard between you and your true self. The mirror contains trickster energy. Put the phone down, stop with the comparisons, and let the mirror stand empty for a while. Rest of the one inside. When light, witnessing the deeper self, pure awareness. When dark, narcissism, comparison, harsh edges. And this is funny because the beginning part of it is what I was saying about true story when I actually pulled these cards. They can shatter, flatter, distort, reflect, and project an image back to us that we deem to be true. It's all about self-perception. I feel like what this is about is potentially like falling in love with the idea of who you perceive yourself to be and how that is dangerous if you don't look at your shadow sides, if you're only seeing the parts of yourself that you like or that you claim. It's the mirror is about illusions, so it's about not seeing yourself clearly. So while it's fine to, like, for example, like if I'm going with this example, it's fine to love those sides of yourself, but if you are only looking at that one image, that one reflection of yourself, it can be dangerous, and that can go either way. Wow. It can be something you love about yourself or something you don't like or love about yourself. And if you're only seeing yourself in that one way, then it's not accurate. It's not accurate to your full and true self. Okay, so I think I'm actually going to leave this message here because I'm going to continue it, but I feel like it's going to be another, like, it's probably going to be more like an actual reading, and so the message is going to be kind of different, and so I don't want to make it too long or whatever. But yeah, so this message can be standalone, but look out for the next one because it will likely be supplementary to this one. So yeah, so hope you guys liked this video. If you did, feel free to give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you feel so called, leave me a comment, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.